today, and the meeting is being recorded for those that are going to be listening later on. So welcome. We're glad that you're here. Today's presentation is really a high-level overview, kind of an introduction to all things statewide assessment. And so hopefully we'll give you the resources that you need to do your job and to be able to find the answers that you need as we go throughout the year. We'll do introductions here in a minute. For those of you that are joining us, Stacy just posted in the chat the link to where the PowerPoints for today are located. So if you would like to retrieve those PowerPoints or follow along, you're welcome to do that. Also, if you would post where you're from in the chat as well, just so we know who's here today, and so we can start familiarizing ourselves with new DACs as well, then that would be great. So if you could put your district along with your name will be there, but your name and your district in the chat, that would be great as well. So this is kind of our agenda today. We'll try to stick to it as close as possible, take a break about midway through for everybody. But of course, take breaks as you need them. And I know you're busy people, so if there's other things that you need to attend to for a little bit and come back, we get that as well. So try to be we try to extend as much grace as possible in this time. NDE is actually still working from home because we've changed office locations and our new office is not ready for us yet. So we're still kind of homeless right now as far as offices go. So you might hear dogs or cats or children or any number of other things at any given time, as much as we try to keep those away. We'll use, as we go through this, please post any questions in chat. We can always stop and try to answer questions as we go. But this is, like I said, this is a high level. We would not get into a lot of the details necessarily for this. So some of the objectives for today are just kind of explain the context for the activities we support and we do throughout the year, kind of give that reasoning behind everything. Look at the different supports that we offer. Not everybody knows about the different supports, since a lot of those supports are optional. And so we want people to know about the things that we do offer and try to help districts with. Take a high-level look at the DAC responsibilities, and then this is probably the most important part of why we do this and why we've continued to do it since we started a couple of years ago, is we really want you to know what your resources are, where to find information, and who to ask questions to as we go through things, because that's probably the most important thing about all of this. If you don't take anything else away, knowing who to ask questions and who to direct your questions to or where to find that information is probably more important than anything else, because the rest of the information we can help you find or answer those questions for you as we go. So really looking to that being one of the most important parts of today. Just kind of give you a little bit about our statewide philosophy, about how we make decisions within the department. For the most part, we are educators that work at NDE. We keep and we have service in mind whenever we do our jobs, right? So we're thinking about students and educators in the districts of the state of Nebraska as we do those things, and keeping them in the front of our mind as we make decisions. There's a lot of people that we have to serve other than this, lawmakers and others in communities, those types of things, but we always try to keep students and educators first. This is kind of a thing that I came up with when I started working at the department in assessment, because everybody asked me what I did, and it's really kind of hard to describe. And so what I started telling people is that we make the laws and policies that others make, and we want to make them as beneficial and as least disruptive as possible, right? So oftentimes laws from both state and federal government we're enacting, but we're also trying to make those the most beneficial, the least disruptive to the things that educators do every day as possible. Yeah, really offer expanded resources to help create balanced assessment systems. And so we're really trying to think about what districts need and how we could better serve districts to do their jobs better. And assessment is a key part of curriculum instruction and assessment, and always better data leads to better results. And so we're trying to always improve those systems. And obviously, we want to fulfill the missions laid out by the State Board of Education and NDE as a whole, trying to fulfill those in the work that we do all the time. So this is once again, I put this in here just to kind of show that we are keeping this in mind. We're not going to make the same decision that you would want us to make every time. But we are thinking about these things all the time. What's best for students? We're thinking about equity. We're thinking about fairness across the state, and reflecting on those things. And a lot of the things that we try to do as far as standardization and security are meant to for those purposes, right? So technical quality, we have to have technical quality in our assessments. It's one of the things that we're peer reviewed on and by the federal government, to just make sure that we have high quality practices all across the board, which is what people would expect from us anyway. You know, trying to make sure that we fulfill the obligations we have in law. The one thing, this is an interesting thing. Most people don't necessarily reflect a whole lot about where state tests came from in Nebraska, but these are actually the purposes that were laid out in law when state assessments started in Nebraska. I always put them in here as a reflection, because the thing I'll say is these are not necessarily the reasons that educators would have enacted state testing. These were policymakers that were doing that, lawmakers that were doing it, and they had very distinct and different reasons. One thing that I'll mention about this is we're kind of flipping this on its head a little bit with our new NSCAS growth model that's coming out, because we're putting educators and students first again with that model. We're still going to make sure we're fulfilling our obligations in law. Otherwise, they'll just change the law and make us change it anyway. But so we're going to make sure we do that. But these reasons are very different than the reasons that educators would have focused on. You'll notice that students are only mentioned in here once, and growth and improvement is not mentioned at all. And so it's really the state tests were really originally designed about accountability and comparability and those types of things. And we've tried to move beyond this in the way that we serve districts and educators across the state. One of the tenets of the State Board of Education, it used to be called the assessment tenet, but they've changed that to student achievement and growth, which I really appreciate, because it's really more about how we continue to help students grow. And we really try to expand the array of supports that we're doing to try to better support districts in balanced assessment. This Department of Education, the Nebraska Department of Education, really can't create a balanced assessment system, because many of those responsibilities lie at the district level, and rightly so. But what we've tried to do is create optional supports that districts can pick up and use, and we can help support that balanced assessment system. It's important for formative assessment practices, especially to inform instruction and moving forward, thinking about interims and summatives and how all of that data works together, all those processes work together to move students forward and improve systems. And so we've really tried to expand a lot of that, and we'll touch on a lot of those pieces today. This is our contact page, and Stacy's going to put this in the chat as well. It includes our contact information for all the people that I'm going to introduce here in a second, as well as our vendors and those types of things. So it's a place where you can go to find all of us and figure out who you might want to contact. And so here we'll go and do this really quick. So my name is Jeremy Henniger. I'm the Director of Statewide Assessment. I've been with the department for about 10 years now. The types of things you can bring to me, well, anything, quite literally about the program. But I do specialize in policy level things, how to use results, security breaches, as much as that is no fun at all for anybody. Accessibility questions I can answer as well. Dr. Trudy Clark is our assistant director. Once again, policy level, result use, and accessibility questions. I should have probably put formative assessment practices and the work that she's going to be leading with assessment literacy as well as an area that she's going to be doing a lot of work in now. Maggie Sis is our program director, I think is the known program coordinator. That's what it is. What I'll tell you about Maggie is if you have data questions, go to Maggie. She's the one that's going to fix it and tell you how to do it and help you with it. So Maggie does all things with data, and that's who you want to start with data questions, because she'll be the best source. And if she doesn't know, she'll help you figure it out, whether that's with the NDE help desk or with others as well. So she does all things data. Iris Owens. Iris is our ACT liaison. She actually works for ACT, but she's resides in our office when we're in offices. And Iris takes care of a lot of the work around ACT, obviously. So any ACT questions should probably go to her first. AOP is ACT online prep or pre-ACT questions. All things ACT, if you start with Iris, you're probably going to get a pretty good result to begin with. So Rhonda True, Rhonda is our grants coordinator. She's currently working on the SIPS grant, which revolves around science. She's going to talk to you about that later on in a little bit here. She's also working a lot with our science assessment right now. So she is a good go-to for those topics. Ali Martinez Wilkinson. Ali is actually an NWA employee that works in our office, and she works with our certified facilitator program, professional learning, and she can answer just about any general NWA questions that you might have as well. I'm gonna slow down, Polly. Polly Bowie is our new NAEP coordinator, and so she's new to the job, but she is in deep with all kinds of learning and webinars right now, and so she's going to be able to help with NAEP questions and specialize in that area. So if you have anything, any questions about the NAEP testing, national testing, the nation's report card, that's where you would go for that information. Dr. Dennison Bola is new to us as well. He is an NWA employee too. He's going to be working with professional learning, formative assessment supports, and kind of helping us with assessment literacy pieces as well. There's lots of new things happening in that area. We're really excited about those things. And Stacy Weber is our admin assistant. Stacy has good general information. She's who you're going to get when you call the office number in general, and then can direct you to who you need to get to if you don't know. She's also going to answer emails to our general email address and send you to the right person to help you in that area as well. So she also helps with events and logistics, any of our webinars and those types of things. But in general, she's also the one you're going to get DAC updates from, emails from. She'll send those out on our behalf. And she's great at directing people to us and helping with the website and all kinds of other things as well. Vendor customer service on the contacts page, you're going to also have at the bottom of the page, you're going to have vendor contacts. So if you have technology questions or your IT people have technology questions about how to install something or how to use something at a very functional level for the computer-based programs that we use, your best bet is to potentially go to vendor customer service for those questions. Oftentimes, if it's doing something inside the system, our people can help you as well. Maggie and Iris for ACT can help you do those things. But if it's really technology driven, I'd encourage you go to the customer service for those vendors, because that is oftentimes the best place for those types of questions. And those are listed on our page too, so you don't have to go looking for them. They're going to be right there for you. A couple other people that I want to call out here and talk about because they're not within the assessment office directly, but they also work with us across the NDE and have a big role to play in the work that we do. So first is Sharon Heater. She works in the special education office, and she's our liaison to assessment. She helps with all things accessibility related, the alternate assessment. You can see her information there. She's a good source for any accessibility questions around special education students, and will handle a lot of those processes that we'll talk about. She does a lot of work with us in the development of the alternate assessment as well. A good person to have around and on your team at all times. So Allison Olson Denbesti, did I say that right, Allison? Good. Got the thumbs up there. Allison is our director of Title III and federal programs, but she also looks after the ELPA 21 assessment as well for the English language proficiency assessment. And so her information is there. We keep Allison close to us so that we can get good information on accessibility for English language learners and make sure that we're thinking about that population of students as well as we're making decisions. Lane Carr is not here today, but he is somebody you might often have questions related to assessments because he's using the assessment information oftentimes afterwards. So Lane Carr is the Director of Accountability in AQuest. And so when it comes to calculations for the accountability systems and designations and those types of things, he is going to maybe be a better contact than the assessment office. Not that we won't try to answer your questions, but he might be your first stop when it comes to designations and classifications for schools and those types of things. Should take the EBA off of there now that we're changing that. This is our general information. So the phone number and the email are our general. If you don't know who to contact, you can always contact that number or that email, and we'll get you sent in the right direction. Stacy, would you post our general page there in the chat as well? We have lots of information on our webpage, almost too much oftentimes, I would say, because there's just so much information. This is a good place to start. We post most new things on our front page of our assessment, but we have lots of other resources as well, and we can help you kind of navigate those and talk about those. I think if we have time at the end of this, we might do a little tour of some of those web pages and everything so that we can talk about those, but I want to make sure we get through the other content first today. So as I was looking at this PowerPoint and updating it, I started to confuse myself. So I thought I would pull back a little bit and do just a little bit with vocabulary a little bit. So NSCAS, or the Nebraska Student-Centered Assessment System, we use that acronym a lot in front of things, but oftentimes when I just talk about NSCAS by itself and I just say the NSCAS system, I'm really talking about everything that we do in the statewide assessment office and a little bit of beyond. And so really it's the NSCAS is the name of the system, or the system, the not only the assessments, but also the other supports that we offer as well. For NSCAS assessments, if we use the term NSCAS assessments, that includes all of the assessments underneath that. So that would be NSCAS ACT, NSCAS General and Growth, NSCAS Alternate, as well as ELPA 21. So if we were talking about NSCAS assessments, those are all NSCAS assessments. ELPA 21 is the only one that we don't regularly put NSCAS with, partly because that's a consortium-based test and it's a broader group of people that are involved in that assessment besides just Nebraska. So when we talk about NSCAS summative, we're really talking about 3 tests in particular. So NSCAS General, which is for our general population of students, right? About 99% of our students. The NSCAS Alternate and NSCAS ACT specifically. So if we refer to NSCAS summative, those are the 3 groups of tests that we're referring to. NSCAS General is actually broken down into further categories. It includes NSCAS Growth right now for 3 through 8, NSCAS Science, because that is not going to be on the growth model. That's only going to be tested once a year, and NSCAS ACT. Those are all summative tests for general populations of students. About 99% of your students will take those tests at whatever point of the year we're going to be giving them. So NSCAS Growth refers to grades 3 through 8, specifically the English language arts and NSCAS mathematics. So when we talk about NSCAS Growth, we're talking about both of those assessments and for all of those grade levels. NSCAS Alternate refers to all of the alternate tests. You can see the grade levels and the content there. One of the things that I'll point out there for high school, right? So if a student qualifies for an alternate assessment, they don't take the ACT. There is no alternate ACT. They take the NSCAS alternate test. And so for your 3rd year cohort students that might qualify for the alternate, they're going to take the alternate NSCAS alternate. And that's important that they participate in that. NSCAS alternate is intended for students with significant cognitive disabilities. Typically less than 1% of the population qualifies for this test. So many of our districts don't have any students that qualify for the alternate assessment. And for those that do, those numbers are generally fairly low. Just because the one thing I'll say about that 1% is that's 1% at the state level. So oftentimes some districts will go over that 1% because they serve a bigger regional area or something like that. They have a program for these students, life skills program or other types of names that are used for students that with significant cognitive disabilities. And so they might go over the 1%, and that's perfectly fine. There's some paperwork that goes along with that, but I'll talk about that later on. Just talk generally about the communications that you're going to receive or encounter as a DAC. So the first thing that I'll say is you are the only DAC. We only identify 1 DAC per district. It doesn't matter how large or small the district is, we only identify 1 person. So it's really important that if you're a new DAC, that you talk to the district leadership team and discuss how you're going to share information out. And that varies so there's 244 districts in the state of Nebraska right now, and there's probably 244 models of how they communicate that information out. In some places, DAC emails get forwarded to every other administrator in the district. In some cases, the DAC is only sharing information that they think needs to go out at a specific time because they are going to take care of most of it in their area. It depends, all of that depends on how you've established with your leadership teams in your district about how to share that information. We don't control that. We encourage transparency and encourage you to share information with people that need it, but we don't control it. And so if you ever want to talk about that or different models that you could use, I'd be glad to have that conversation with you. But really figuring out the way to get the information that people need out to others is a district responsibility, because it varies from district to district. And so, just think about the best way to go about doing that. You're going to receive DAC emails. We try not to overwhelm you with DAC emails. When I was a DAC in a district, when I would see a DAC update, that kind of cued to me that I needed to read that email, because we try not to send them out any more frequently than we need to. But usually that information, we've deemed it important. Hopefully you will deem it important too. We think you will want to take care of it and look at that. Those will come out. We'll try to put the main content in the title, but oftentimes we have a series of bolded areas within the email and deal with different sets of information as we go through it, so that you can find the information or take the information and send it on to others if they need it. So if something's an ACT related piece of information, we'll try to make sure that that's clearly marked. If it's a deadline, we'll try to make sure that that's clearly marked so that you know when to take care of something by. So like I said, we try to send those out infrequently, but as needed. And so sometimes you'll get one or two in a week. Sometimes it'll go a couple weeks without any at all. And of course, the closer we get to any assessments, the more likely you are to get those DAC updates and reminders and those types of things. Since we've been working with NWA, we've also been doing bi-weekly NWA partner emails. Those come out as DAC email through the same system. Stacy sends those out as well. And those are to kind of keep information flowing about all things related to the NWA contract, which is a pretty big contract. Includes MAP growth, includes a certified facilitator program and professional learning. So anything related to that could be included in the partnership email. What I'll say about those is oftentimes they're going to have new information and then reminders for things that might be coming up. One thing that we're going to try to start doing with those emails is calling out things that are new in those emails, and so that you can kind of pay attention to those newer things. Or but we also heard from other existing DACs that said they really like this communication because it serves as a reminder that they might need to do something coming up with a deadline. So we'll continue to do those as well. You're going to get vendor emails occasionally from the vendors directly. Oftentimes these will be with reminders or when something is due, or technology issues, right? So sometimes they're just information that's going to come out to you. And it's hard to say how often these are going to happen. If you see something from NWA, DRC, or ACT, you probably want to pay attention to it. We have a list of people that you're going to receive emails from, so that you know that those are probably important emails. I don't know, just as a general question to the team, do we have that updated yet for this year? Or do we need to do that still?
Please repeat that question.
The list of who they would receive emails from, have we updated that yet for this year?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
That's on the
that other slide.
Yeah, the contact slide.
Okay.
With all of our contact information.
Okay, very good. Thank you. So on the content page, there is a list of who you would possibly receive emails from the vendors. So that's there as well. Thank you, Maggie. These are the assessment dates. These you've seen, potentially have seen in other presentations we've done here at the beginning of the school year. These really haven't changed except for the fact that we did extend the winter pilot, the winter growth, the NSCAS Growth winter pilot by an extra week from what we originally announced. So the window is from December 1st to January 28th, which is a week longer than we originally announced. But all of these other dates are what you see here. The one thing I'll mention with NSCAS General, right, is that we do have a 7-week window. It's a 6-week window to do your testing in, and then a week makeup. So you shouldn't schedule testing in that last week. It should be just finishing up anything. You're welcome to finish up things earlier than that, but that last week is really intended to try to finish up all the testing, and you shouldn't schedule it for that week. If you schedule it for that week and you have a snowstorm, you might have a problem, right? So you never know what's going to happen. You want to make sure that the testing gets done before that, and in that large window. Here are the ACT dates. Iris is going to talk about ACT later on, but I did want to put all of these dates together so that you had access to them all in one place. Keep in mind for ACT, you can choose between the test window 1 or test window 2, and you will have the ability to do makeup testing for ACT in any subsequent window. So if you choose test window 1, you'd have test window 2 and test window 3 to do makeups. If you choose test window 2, you would only have test window 3 for makeups. That being said, many of our districts or small districts don't need to do makeups at all because all their kids show up for the first day and there's not a big deal. So depending on the size of your district and all of those types of things might give you an indication of if you need to which of those you need to schedule it in. Or when you scheduled it last year, probably give you a good idea too. One of the things that I'll mention is that if you're doing paper pencil testing, if you can always do makeup testing on the computer, and you have a lot more opportunities to do makeup testing if you use the computer-based system, and you can mix and match those with your kids and doing makeups and all those things. So there's a lot of versatility here. To try to help you find dates that work for you in your district and make sense for you, for what you need to get done there. Maggie is great, and she put together some additional information here for DACs to be able to just kind of give an overview, right? So Maggie put this DAC task management checklist, and somebody should probably pop that into the chat as well. This gives a general timeline for a lot of the things that we're going to need you to do throughout the year. It doesn't have specific dates all the time because a lot of times we don't know the specific date until later in the year, but it does give a general timeline for when those activities might occur, just to inform you about how the year kind of looks and how it progresses. There are things that happen early in the year to try to prep for later in the year. But a lot of that obviously kind of builds the closer we get to testing windows. The link is there for the testing windows as well. Also, if you want to take a look at reports about who we think is supposed to test, you have access to a series of reports and advisor to be able to check that roster information, and Maggie can help you do that if you have questions about that. Maggie, is there anything else that you want to mention about this information?
I just want to mention that it's important to get that advisor access because those reports are going to become more important because of the NSCAS growth. And so now is the time to get that access rather than later.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point. Trying to get access now, if you don't have access to those advisor reports, it would be something that you could get done early and then know that you have access when it comes time to look at that information later on. Thank you, Maggie. So we're going to talk a little bit about, so I'm going to go over NSCAS summative with NWA and then NSCAS alternate here at the start, and kind of give that information, and then we'll break down into ACT and some of the other areas as we go forward. The first thing that I'll mention is that we do have 3 assessment vendors, and we actually have a 4th assessment vendor when you talk about ALPA 21, because there's another vendor for that. That is somewhat confusing, but it is what it is. Those are the people that have the contracts, and so we do the best we can with that. NSCAS General for grades 3 through 8 for most of our students is run by NWAA. I shouldn't say run by, they are vendor partners. We run the program and they help us do all things related to that. NSCAS alternate, our partner is DRC. Data Recognition Corporation. We commonly refer to them as DRC. They've been associated with Nebraska assessment for a long time now. Then NSCAS ACT, obviously ACT is our partner there for the high school assessments for most of our students. These are our tested grades for each of the tests and what gets reported out. One of the big things that I'll mention here, and I can't stress this enough because this confuses people over and over again if they're new to the program or new to assessment. We don't actually test juniors in high school. We actually test 3rd year cohort students, and there is a difference, right? So juniors are typically designated by the number of credits they've received in high school. So a student might be in their 2nd year of high school, but a junior because they did acceleration classes over the summer or something like that. And so they might be ahead of in their schedule, or they might be behind. They may have failed some classes or been highly mobile. And so they took a semester off because of travel or something like that. And so they might not be a junior, but they might be in their 3rd year cohort. We actually test 3rd year cohort students. So once a student originally enrolls in 9th grade, it's expected that in 3 years they will test. And that is the expectation in law and what we go by, right? It's not about what classes they've taken, what grade level they're in. It's 3rd year cohort students. And so you might be thinking, oh, we're going to test our juniors. Well, sometimes that is who you're testing, because most of our students are 3rd year cohort students are juniors or 11th graders, but there can be variation in that. And I can't stress that enough, because that does throw a lot of people off. And because people don't always know what year a student is in school. They might know what, I came from a small school. I knew all the juniors. I knew who was supposed to test, but I might not know who was in their 3rd year of school and a sophomore, or in their 2nd year and a junior because of acceleration. So I can't stress that enough. It's one of the biggest things that confuses a lot of people when it comes time to do testing. The other thing that I'll say is you might have a junior student that's not in the 3rd year cohort. They cannot take the ACT. So it is only 3rd year cohort students that we test at the high school level. So the Nebraska Student-Centered Assessment System and the work that we do with NWA underneath that is really not only the assessments, but it's a system of supports that we put out for balanced assessment. And so NWA's contract includes the summative NSCAS that we're going to talk about, NSCAS Growth and NSCAS Science. Interim MAP assessments provided by MWA, so MAP Growth, the assessment, even though at this level for interim testing, we're going to be replacing NSCAS Growth for both of these pieces, right? The summative NSCAS goes away and basically it becomes an interim system with NSCAS Growth for ELA and for math. Hopefully you've been able to tune into that. I'm not going to get into a lot with NSCAS Growth now because there's other resources for that. So formative process support. So there's a lot of work going on kind of behind the scenes right now and I'll talk about it in a little bit as well. Those formative supports, assessment literacy supports that are going to be coming out, and work that we're increasing, what we're doing and how we're trying to support districts moving forward there. And then a whole series of professional learning. All of this is part of the NWA contract that we partner together with and work with them on. So the summative test, the general summative test, that the partner is NWA. We are moving to a different platform this year. In the past, we've been on the same platform as MAP Growth. NSCAS Growth is requiring us to move to a new system that's more sophisticated. There's a lot of benefits to that. The change is not necessarily a benefit, but there's going to be good logistical reasons why we're moving with that. And you're going to get lots more information about that coming up soon as we prepare for the winter pilot. In general, NDE works well with our partners to take care of a lot of the rostering aspects, but there will be opportunities for districts to add additional information into the system and to make things easier. That might not make a whole lot of sense right now, but it will later. We pull information based on grade level FTE. This is another area where data is often not put into your student information systems correctly. So we test students that are 51% or more enrolled, right? So if a student is a part-time student, maybe they go to the parochial school in your district part-time, and they go to the public school part-time. Any student that is 51% or more within the public school are students that we test. So if you receive the bulk, a student receives the bulk of their learning from a public institution, we expect those students to test. And so oftentimes students get put into student information systems as a FTE of 1 or a full-time student, even when they're part-time. And this is an area where data needs to be cleaned up oftentimes when it comes to testing. So kind of keep that in mind. Alternate assessment flag, and so students that have the alternate assessment flag within your student information systems, a lot of our districts use SRS for their SPED information. If that is marked correctly, then those students will not be added to the general side of things. They'll be added to the alternate side of things. That is a really important flag for students that have been deemed as alternate. If that is not marked correctly, then the students get put in the wrong place. It is a common thing that has to be cleaned up and corrected as we move forward. So that's something that from our perspective, is pretty important that districts pay attention to and make sure is correct in whatever system feeds that to NDE's advisor system, and making sure that that alternate assessment flag is marked for the correct students and not marked for other students. Kind of talk about those pieces there. Like I said, not only is the platform changing for management, but also for the student users. All this information is coming really soon for all of you. You'll be able to share it with your tech directors. Lockdown browser. It's going to be very familiar for your students. There are some slight differences. What I'll say is all of these programs and interfaces are fairly similar in the way that they work, and our children are really digital natives at this point in time, and they shouldn't have a big problem with that. That being said, we also think it's important that students have an experience within that platform. So there are practice tests, item type samplers, and those types of things for students to use with the new system as we prepare for that. We do have a sandbox coming for you. A technology sandbox, so that you can get in the system ahead of time and start to look at that if you would like to, so that when training comes out, you can use that system to play around, right, and learn inside that sandbox. That's the whole point of a digital sandbox, is to kind of figure out things in an environment that you can't really break, and so that you can, not that you could break the other one, we can always fix things, but that's coming soon, and training and support information is coming soon too. So a lot of information around that platform is going to be out. relatively soon. So kind of pay attention to that so that we get your technology needs met ahead of time, and you're not running around at the last minute with your tech people trying to get things installed. So kind of be paying attention for that one. I mentioned this only, well, for a couple of reasons. So for summative purposes, when students take the general assessment or the alternate assessment, they're placed into one of three categories: developing, on track, or college and career ready benchmark, based on the cut scores and everything. I put the full definitions in here. Oftentimes we truncate these things down to just the title instead of using the full definitions. And I get that because there's not space always for the full definitions, but it's one of the things that I think is important to say. It's not just college and career ready, right? So our third graders are not college and career ready for the most part. They might be on track to being college and career ready, or they might have met a benchmark to be college and career ready, but they're not college and career ready by themselves at this point in time. And so it's always worth mentioning that not only are these the definitions for the ALDs, but the ALDs also have additional information behind them for each of the indicators or standards about how that breaks down. So students, it describes the type of work that students do at the developing level, at the on-track level, and at the CCR benchmark level as well. And so this can be good instructional information as well for teachers to when they use the achievement level descriptors. And each of those is on a content page, which are linked right here for you. So each page under the general assessment, English, language arts, math, and science, they all include test specification information. So they describe what the test looks like, what standards are on it, how frequently they are on those tests. So it gives good information about the content that we're testing. We try to be transparent in what we test as far as that goes. And then you'll see the achievement level descriptors for each of those tests too. So that's good information for your teachers to have as they look at the results from assessments in the past and going forward as well. So that's interesting. NSCAS Growth for ELA and math. Like I said, I'm not going to go into great detail about NSCAS Growth today because there's a lot of information we just released on all of that. But it was interesting as I was updating this slide deck, most of this did not change. This is all the same as NSCAS Summative. It's computer adaptive with a paper accommodated form, single session. It includes technology enhanced items as well as multiple choice items, and it's aligned to Nebraska's college and career ready standards. ELA standards are going to be changing. They're in the midst of being updated right now. And so we'll realign items to that and have to update the assessment. If you're looking for NSCAS Growth information and you didn't catch a lot of that from administrator days, I'd encourage you to go to that page. Stacy, could you put NSCAS Growth referenced in there? There are lots of resources on NSCAS Growth and the transition we're going through this year and into next year. So if you haven't been able to watch that information, kind of check that out. I did a presentation, a high-level presentation at Administrator Days for that, and that's recorded and up on the website. There's also a couple of what I'd call teaser trailers, and that's high-level introductions, one for universal audiences and one for educator audiences. And then there's some vignettes there as well as some other resources. Those vignettes get into specific details around 4 different areas: psychometrics, data and reporting, content, and the user experience. And so we've tried to put out a lot of information to kind of help you, help support you and support people that want to know more about that as we make this transition. NSCAS General Science. So we are finally getting to an operational test this year in 2022. COVID slowed us down. A big change in standards slowed us down some. So for grades 5 and 8, we'll be testing this spring operationally for the first time. It's aligned to the CCR standards, Nebraska's CCR science standards. It's task-based, and so it looks a little bit different. There's a scenario or a problem, and the students have to answer a series of questions based on that task. And so in many ways, it looks a little more like the ELA test where they've read a passage and then answer multiple questions about them. But basically, those tasks build on one another. We'll have standard setting where we determine cut scores in the summer of 22. So after the testing, we'll bring teachers together, educators from across the state in a panel to recommend cut scores. So you're not going to get results immediately from the science assessment because we have to go through that standard setting process. The teachers will help recommend cut scores. So the point on the scale in which students get sorted into developing on track or college and career ready benchmark. That recommendation will then go through the department and to the State Board of Education for approval. Typically that happens in September of the year, possibly August. So you may know, you're going to know for your ELA and your science, mathematics results much earlier than you're going to know your science results for the first year. Because it's the first year, you're going to know those ELA and mathematics much sooner than you're going to know science. We haven't put together the whole schedule for that yet and those activities, but science results therefore won't be ready until later into the summer right now. NSCAS science for these grades is going to only be given one time a year as opposed to NSCAS growth, which will be multiple times a year. It's a very different assessment. It's very different from our old science assessment, which was just very discrete knowledge. And this is much more application of knowledge as we move forward. NSCAS general results are reported at the school and district level publicly by law. That has to happen. They also have to be reported by subgroups. So we have to sort that out and have to put information about males and females, different races, breakdowns, students with special ed, students with a 504 or an IEP, English language learners. All of those different things have to be disaggregated in the information we put out publicly. And those results feed into the AQuest accountability system for calculations on accountability basis for schools and for districts. I'm going to just pause right there, get a drink of my Pepsi and see if there's any questions about anything that I've covered so far. That is a weird spot because I didn't see the alternate information. Sorry. Give me 1 second. How did we skip all that? I'll be right back with you here. I'll just got to find my space. Okay. I'm sorry, were there any questions or anything that I can help with right now before we move on?
I have a question. This is Molly Thompson from Paxton. I had a question about the new platform for NSCAS Growth.
Yep.
For the districts that choose to still do fall MAPS growth, will that link to the new platform, or is the new platform strictly for the NSCAS Growth?
Yeah, the MAP growth and NSCAS growth are not on the same platform, so you'll have to have both systems up, and that actually leads really well into information about NSCAS interim, right? So NSCAS interim has been MAP growth grades 3 through 8 that we've paid for traditionally. Optional for districts, they can utilize it up to 4 times a year, computer adaptive, immediate results, all of those types of things. And rostering's district responsibility as we move forward, NSCAS growth will kind of replace that for grades 3 through 8. But we are also paying for We did this last year, and we're going to do it for the next 3 years. We're going to pay for K2 map growth if your district uses that, and 9-10. So moving forward, all the way to 23, 24, which those are weird numbers to say out loud. We're taking care. We found we had extra funds because of some of the federal stimulus money and because of different other contracts that we're in to be able to cover that for districts as we move forward. So it is likely that districts may use map growth in K through 2. We'll go to NSCAS growth in 3 through 8, and then might go back to map growth. And so you're going to probably need both systems for the time being. I don't know that NWA has a plan to change the platform for map growth, but at this time there are the 2 different platforms, the one you're used to for map growth, and then the new one for NSCAS growth, and all that information's coming out soon.
Okay, thank you.
Jeremy, this is Teresa Hasman. I have a follow-up question to Molly's question and answer you just gave her. Yeah. Since NSCAS science is only given one time a year, our 5th through 8th grade science teachers like to have a starting point in the fall, checking how much students held on to over the summer.
Yep. And
then again, like to check for growth from fall to winter. And so if moving forward next year, would the district have to pay for map growth for science for 5th through 8th grade?
Yeah, so I've asked for that to be in the new contract for districts that want to use map growth science for grades 3 through 8. So it's not in the contract yet, but our plan is for it to be in there. So you're not just paying for those grades. That is
okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
So, yep, yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. There's also a question about science being in the new platform. Yes. So the science assessment is on the same platform as NSCAS Growth. So all the summative assessments will be in the same platform. And then all map growth would be in that other map platform. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Great questions. Talk about this just generally. There's going to be all kinds of new information coming out this year. I talked about Dr. Bulla being hired to help us with this work. Trudy's going to be working on this work. Allie is going to be working on this work. And we're really working to improve our support of formative assessment and assessment literacy. And so there's lots of key pieces to that. One of the things that we're looking at are information about assessment literacy that we can align all of this work to. We understand that formative assessment is the type of assessment that moves students the most. And so we want to be able to support teachers across the state in formative assessment processes. So we're looking at how we can best do that. We're also looking into how to partner with post-secondary institutions and those types of things to improve the overall training that we do for our teachers as well. So there's lots of different avenues that we're pursuing to improve things and to try to have positive impacts on the system. This is going to probably include some of our certified facilitator people out there doing professional learning. We've already had some professional learning around formative assessment, but this is, you're not seeing the slides. Okay. That's good to know. Thank you, Rhonda. I'm gonna, oh. Can you see that now? There we go. Okay. Yeah, so there were slides and what I just talked about too. So that's the NSCAS interim information, and then map growth K through 2 and 9 through 10. So that's was there. We were talking about this one right here and about formative assessment supports and all the work that we're going to be doing there. This is kind of a stay tuned. There's not a lot of details yet. We have some preliminary plans and they are exciting, but there's not a ton to share right now because we're not ready to do that at this time. But it's exciting work that's kind of happening behind the scenes right now. So stay tuned for this work coming up. Yeah, so this is one of the big pieces of this is the formative assessment network that we're looking at, how to basically create formative assessment experts that will help coach other teachers throughout the state and within districts and how to better improve our formative assessment processes. And so this, not only is this exciting for ELA and for math and for science for things that we do summative testing on, but this could be help for any teacher in any classroom in any setting to be able to improve their processes. And so really trying to think about how we move assessment literacy, formative assessment processes, and how we continue to improve that. Nebraska used to be a leader in assessment literacy and those types of things because we had a lot of people going through our assessment program back in the STARS era and getting assessment endorsements, and we've kind of lost some of that as we went to statewide assessments. We want to bring some of that back and because we know that it moves students forward and it improves processes. So we want to support those areas of assessment as well as doing a good job in our summative and interim assessment work as well. One of the things that I'll mention specifically, and kind of hearkening back to science, we were able to use some of our resources from the not having testing in 2020 because of COVID pandemic. We were able to switch some of those resources and put out formative assessment tasks or classroom assessment tasks for grades 5 and 8 for the new science standards. These are really good resources because they really would help teachers and students understand the type of assessment they're going to encounter this spring for science. Not only that, is for those grade levels, we've also been working on additional grade levels as well. And we're going to be adding additional tasks to that repository soon. We probably, somebody just posted that in chat, I bet, because I see it blinking at me. Yeah, Ron is going to be talking more about that here in a little bit as well. Professional learning, I mentioned Ali Martinez Wilkinson. She's our professional learning lead and coordinates a lot of the work around our certified facilitators. We have 72 certified facilitators across the state. All of our ESUs have certified facilitators and most of our large districts have certified facilitators. They receive training and then can take that training out to others throughout the districts and the schools. And they are trained in a lot of different assessment practices, whether it's using results from MAP Growth, and we're moving to NSCAS Growth, so they're going to be able to do that as well. It includes assessment, formative assessment practices, goal setting, all of those types of things. And these are good resources. And they're going to be even more important now as we move to NSCAS Growth. One of the things that makes me feel good about this transition is that we already have a system of people to help us with the transition already in place and ready to do that. So we are already working on professional development around supporting NSCAS Growth and that transition and how to use those results. And that's going to be available as we move forward. And we're working on those pieces and developing those pieces kind of as we speak. So talking about the alternate just a little bit here, a lot of this information looks similar, but it's a little bit different. We're not spending a ton of time on it, but we think it's important for you to have a resource for these students as well, because even though it's only 1% of your students, it's a whole different system that you have to navigate. Even if it is just for one student. So it's important that you have this information or access to this information too. So the vendor partner, as I said, is DRC. They use the eDirect system to do test management and results and all of those types of things. And basically the same process, we use the same process to roster students, but with the opposite of, we grab the students with the alternate assessment flag for this system and put them into that system. It's based on grade level and that FTE again, students that are 51% time or more, and that qualify for the alternate assessments. They have significant cognitive disabilities. Students can interact with an online test or a paper pencil test. That it's up to the teachers about which way to go with that. Some of the students are able to interact with a touch-based device and answer the questions. Most of the students cannot, and so that is there's a lot of individual. Well, this whole test is actually, I'm sorry. The whole test is actually individually based, right? So this test is a one-to-one test, one proctor to one student, students with the most significant cognitive disabilities. It's important to note that federal guidance only allows for 1% of students to take this test. One thing I'll say about that is it's 1% of students in the state, not necessarily 1% of students in the district. Nebraska has been over that 1%, just barely, the last couple of years. So we have to apply for a waiver. As part of that process, districts have to fill out paperwork and a justification letter if they're going to go over the 1%. So why are you going to go over that percent? Now, that the reasoning might be as simple as we have one student and that puts us over 1%, or it might be any number of other reasons. We regionally serve lots of students from different districts because we have the capacity to do so, or a health system or a program of some sort. There's lots of good reasons why districts go over 1%. But if that happens, you have to submit this justification level. It is really important that all districts use the NDE guidelines for eligibility. These guidelines have been established by the special education department. It's really important that your IEP teams follow these guidance to figure out who qualifies and who doesn't. One thing that I'll say is it is important that everybody does that, because we only get that 1% of students. So if you have a student that shouldn't be taking that test, it takes up somebody else's spot basically. And so it's really important that you're doing that. One of the things that our special education department checks is when they're doing IEP checks is have these guidelines been followed, and are we making sure that only the students that are eligible for the alternate are taking it. The alternate math and science are aligned to the Nebraska College and Career Ready extended standards. We've taken the regular standards and extended them to be more in line with the students and where they are, the students that have the significant cognitive disabilities. So it's really important that your teachers that work with these students have access to those standards. The science assessment will change once again, just like the general science assessment. The alternate science assessment is going to be done for the first time this year, and it's aligned to the College and Career Ready extended standards that have been created by NDE and teachers. Once again, that standard setting is in the summer of 22. The alternate assessment is only 3 answer options, right? So it's been simplified. It's only multiple choice questions, and there's 3 answer options as opposed to 4, which you'll find in most of the general assessments. It's very visual based. It's a one-to-one administration. It's read aloud by the proctor to all students that take this test. It can be, like I said, either computer or paper pencil. The proctor in all cases, unless the student interacts directly with it, will enter those responses for the student. And we provide a recorded training on how to do that for those proctors. There's training on how to do just about everything we do. We make recordings of trainings for those, or have those live for people to attend. This is really important. You will not receive materials for this assessment. You have to print these materials off. They're within that eDirect system. If you have a student, you can print off the specific grade level for that student. and those are then destroyed at the end of the test window. It's really important for security reasons that you follow those processes and do that correctly. So those responses have to be entered in the computer system. So, and this is really to get results back quicker to you. We don't send an answer sheet in to be scanned or anything like that. You enter, or your proctor enters this information into the answers into the system so that it can be computer scored, and we can get score results back to you much sooner that way. I included this again just as a reminder that we use the same achievement level descriptors for alternate that we do for the general assessment. That is despite these students have significant cognitive disabilities. The thing that I'll say about it is that it is based on the extended standards as opposed to the general standards. The other thing is that these students are grouped in for reporting along with other students. So these results are publicly reported at the school and district level. Alternate in most cases are a sub-classification or a subgroup that you could look at just the alternate students in if there's enough alternate students. Our public reporting follows some masking rules that hides information if there's a few less than 10 students. So you might not be able to see that publicly if you have too few of students at any level or within any subgroup. But basically these results get aggregated up to with all of the other students as well. And we use the same 3 achievement levels for that. The results do feed into the AQuest accountability system, so that all students are included in that process. Some notes about accessibility. We update and publish the summative and alternate assessment manual every year. The updated version will be available soon, although it won't look very much different from the existing one. There is a shorter form version that just refers to accommodations or accessibility features. And really your special education teachers should be very familiar with this manual as it has huge impacts on not only state testing, but potentially for interim testing moving forward. And so make sure that they have access to that document when it comes out and any updates that might happen with it. The other thing that I'll say about accessibility is writing accessibility rules and information for every student in every situation is impossible. It's just not feasible because we have unique students across the state that have very specific disabilities or very specific needs. And so if something doesn't seem to be working for a particular student and you have questions about it, reaching out to Sharon Heater or myself is a good way to go to ask questions about what might be appropriate and what might be allowable beyond what's in the manual, right? So the manual covers most cases in most instances, but there's always the possibility of some unique set of circumstances occurring. And so if you think those are occurring and you have questions, feel free to reach out to us and ask those questions. So this is really important. Accommodations for students with IEPs must be recorded in their IEPs and used in daily instruction, right? So you shouldn't be doing something on a summative assessment or statewide assessment that you're not doing in daily instruction. That would be against the rules and a fairly big violation, actually. Do not assume more is better, right? So as your IEP teams come together, if they're checking every box for every student, they're probably doing it wrong. They really need to be specific about what accommodations are needed. More is not always better. What students need is better, and being very specific about that. So once we put out the manual for the year, we typically don't change it, but you can ask or make suggestions about how to improve that going forward. We do ask that you record which accessibility supports, what accommodations and supports are used by students. It's really important that we get this information. This is an area where we have a lack of good information because all districts don't always do a great job of inputting this information for us. But it is really important for us to have the information about what accessibility features are being used so that we can continue to improve those, and for reporting and research processes as well. So please take the time to do that at the end of your windows or during each of the windows to make sure we get that information. That is a little bit different in each of the systems, so I won't go into it right now, but it is important that you provide that information. Accessibility in general, especially for special education students, could be directed to Sharon or myself. Couple more slides here, and then we're going to take a break. Regional workshops. So we every fall, usually in October, we do well, before the pandemic, we did a road show, right? We went across the state, 5 different places and met with people. We changed this up a little bit because there's just lots of information this year. So we're only going to do it 3 times, but each of those is going to be about a different topic. And we're going to record those as well. We hope to be out in amongst you as we go. Hopefully things continue to improve in the pandemic and everything. This wasn't really a pandemic decision. This was about facilitating good information in a short amount of time to lots of people this year. And so a regional workshop, we'll get into more detailed information about the year for each of these. You're going to be getting information about NSCAS growth on an ongoing basis as we prep for the winter pilot. So that's going to be not just this one day that you don't have to wait till we have information for that. You're going to get it multiple times before then. But this will be one day that we kind of come together and kind of review a lot of that information and try to make sure as many questions are answered for you as possible for NSCAS growth, NSCAS ACT, and then all the other kind of topics that we've already kind of alluded to. We'll be talking about more in depth about what's going on with each of those areas then on the October 27th. And you can see those dates and times, and those, like I said, those will be recorded as well. So if you can't make those and want to review them at a different time, that would be possible to do. This is the last thing that I'll say. This actually is I think my second to last slide. The last one's for questions. This is my second big point for the day. The first one was about resources, where to find information and who to ask questions to. This last one is about feedback. I push the statewide assessment office very hard and our vendors very hard to make sure that we are open to feedback. Even though many of us were educators and worked in districts, we're not now, you are. And so we want to listen to you and those teachers in the classroom as much as possible. So if you ever have any suggestions, we want you to reach out to us about how to make the system better, how to make it more user-friendly, what data would be better for you, if there's something else that you could benefit from. We work really hard at trying to make those feedback opportunities available. So because some of the things that we do, we have this assessment and accountability advisory group. They meet at least twice a year, and they are practitioners from large and small districts all across the state. About 50 people come together, and we ask them questions about specific things that we're working on, and they provide feedback and try to direct us to making the best decision we can. Like I said, making it the most beneficial and the least disruptive as possible. We have a technical advisory committee called TAC. That technical advisory committee has 3 nationally recognized psychometricians on it, and then a Nebraska teacher and a Nebraska administrator on it. And we take technical issues about technical quality of our assessments to that group, and they advise us regularly, once again, about twice a year, but more often if we need it. They've had a big hand in NSCAS growth and will continue to have a big hand in advising us as we move forward. We often put out surveys, or our vendor partners will put out surveys asking for feedback about how administrations work, how we can improve things, how can we do our jobs better. And you can always email or call. Like I said, we work really hard to be open to those types of suggestions, and our vendor partners do as well. We always want to think about how we can improve efficiency, how we can improve systems, how we can improve results for those of you that are in the field doing the work. And so never be hesitant to offer that information. And the last thing I'll say about all of this before we take, actually, I don't think we're going to break first. I think we're going to Rhonda first, aren't we? I should have brought that up in front of me again. Okay, so we'll go to that in a second. I'll answer any questions now, but the other thing that I'll say about questions is don't ever be afraid to ask questions to our staff. That's what we're here to do. We do send out a lot of information. There's lots of systems. There's lots of processes. We want you to read everything we send out, but we also know that you are busy people and that you have a lot of different hats that you wear and that you're going to be doing different things at different times. Many of us have been administrators. Many of us have been teachers. We get that you're busy. Don't spend hours looking for an answer that you know you read someplace. Call us, email us. We'll help you find the answer the best we can and as quickly as we can, because your time is valuable. And so don't ever be afraid to send an email. I've had people in the past say, well, I didn't want to bother you. Well, you're not bothering us. We're doing our jobs to help support you. So we much rather you call and ask us than spend more time than you should trying to find the answer. So please don't hesitate to reach out with feedback or questions at any time. I gotta have a couple minutes to answer some questions. Teresa, did you have something?
I do. Sorry, it's me again.
No, you're fine.
Yeah, I think
just
I've
said what I was done saying. I said, ask your questions. It's good.
Okay, so one bit of feedback I would give that caused a lot of confusion last year is the accommodation tool short form was not updated.
Okay.
And so in our presentation, because our goal is to make sure the test is given the same way to every student, and for those students who should be receiving accommodations, we do that. But the short form of accommodations, we had to strike out a lot because it didn't apply to last year's summative. And also the EL tools caused great confusion when you add the label nearly proficient. That is not an actual classification for an EL student. And we had to meet literally with every EL department at the buildings, 6 different buildings, to make sure the students were receiving accommodations who should receive accommodations. So that caused great confusion. I know why we say nearly proficient, but if we want the test to be more valid and reliable, our scores, we've got to clean that up a bit. Okay. So I hope you're updating that this year is my hope.
Yeah, it should have been updated last year. We'll take a look at that. Allison, did you have, I saw you come.
But I think just the copyright doesn't update it. It's what's in it needs to be updated.
Yeah, I do have a question, just a clarification, and I appreciate the feedback too. I'm wondering if we applied the numerical scale of the domain scores to show, for example, proficient is any combination of 4s and 5s. So if we define nearly proficient, and if, for example, that's 3s across the board, would that be helpful?
That would clear it up and it would make it fair and consistent. And
that
also
doable.
Yeah. And hang on, let's see here. There was one other we had to cross out. I mean, Jeremy, I'll email you at a different.
Yeah, please. That's probably the best way to make sure we get the right information. Absolutely. Please send us that. Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
That'd be great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Other questions that anybody has? That's a really good example of things that we can try to do better. So thank you for pointing that out, Teresa. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing, and Rhonda is going to share a little bit about science and SIPs, the grant that we received and we're working on. And then we'll do a break after that. So actually, I just want to point out to my team that I'm actually ahead of schedule by about 6 minutes. I don't know if anybody else has noticed that or not, but I just wanted to point that out. So.
Okay, thumbs up. Can you see my screen? Jeremy, can you see it?
Yes, we can see your, we're not seeing the presentation screen. We're seeing the one with the.
Okay. Let me get to that. Are you seeing the slideshow now or no?
We're seeing the slides along the side still not the presentation mode. There you go.
Okay, perfect. I am on a different computer today, so you know, all things challenging on the day we start. So anyway, good morning and welcome. I am Rhonda True, and I was introduced earlier. I'm the competitive grants state assessment specialist. And since that I coordinate the SIPS grant, and that is a science assessment grant, then I also talk a lot about science. So that is what I'm going to do this morning. So the first thing I thought I would start with is just doing a high level overview. I know Jeremy covered a little of this, but where did we start with NSCAS summative and going all the way back to 2017 when we adopted our standards for science, Nebraska and College Career Ready Standards for Science, and started visioning. So this started back in 2017. We developed task force, did some pilot development. Teachers came in 2018. 2019 actually gave the science pilot for NSCAS summative. 2020, COVID hit and we pivoted. And because we were not able to give field tests that year, we basically pivoted to how else can we support teachers in classrooms and students across the state. And we began bringing teachers in that summer of 2020 to develop that formative classroom task repository for grades 5 and 8 that I'm going to talk about here in a little bit. And then in 2021, this current summer, or past spring, we gave the field test, and then we continued to bring teachers in this past summer in 2021 to develop even that repository to grow it even more. So we brought in teachers across the state who developed 4th grade, 7th grade, and high school physical science tasks that will be in the repository by mid-fall. We also brought in teachers across the state to continue the summative task development. So we had teachers really busy this summer, all in a virtual space, but working on science assessment development for both classroom level as well as summative level. And then of course the star is here for 2022. This spring, we will go operational with the science test. And then as Jeremy talked about earlier, we will bring teachers in to do standard setting this summer and then get board approval for the cut scores either late like August or September. So that is just science assessment development timeline in a nutshell. This is a very small slide and I'm not going to focus a lot on it other than to let you know there is a science assessment theory of action where we talk about what do we want for kids, which you see as the top. What do we want for kids and educators across our state for science as outcomes? And then the next part is then what do we have to do all the way down to system design, system setting and use? How about actions by educators and students and families? And then how about data use to get to those outcomes? So I'm going to pull up those outcomes now so that you can see them in a larger way here. These are the outcomes we want for kids related to science. We want, and for teachers and educators across our state, we want science, our assessment system, to be systematic and systemic. We need that coherence in our system. So all pieces talk to each other as well as inform each other so that we move students forward in their learning. We want to make sure, the second one here is that we're really giving teachers, educators, leaders across our state, we want to make sure they're getting information, getting professional learning, so that they become effective and credentialed people in using these pieces and these supports. We also, the third one here, we want to make sure all students are learning in a three-dimensional way. Our standards are three-dimensional, so we want kids to be able to take that learning, become critical users of information, and be able to apply it to their life, to new learning situations, to transfer that learning in a three-dimensional way. And then the second to last outcome here for students, we really want to make sure like we're preparing kids for workforce, right? For life, that they're going to be those good consumers of information. They're going to have those higher level thinking skills to make critical thinking, to do sense making. And so we really, that's our goal for our students. And we're preparing them, like I said, for education, for career, and civic opportunities. And science can be a huge component with that. As you can see here, all of these are aligned to the AQUEST standards. So big picture, Nebraska's science assessment claims. I've spoken to this, but we want to make sure our students are scientifically literate and civic minded decision makers. We want them ready for life, for career. And we do that by teaching them how to be critical consumers of information and how to gather, analyze, and communicate that information, to use it as evidence, to make sense of things, and to really break down the walls of science so that when kids look at something, it's not in silos of different domains of science, but really interconnected. When we look at a phenomenon, we look through the lens on figuring that out, and we bring in all the pieces of content, knowledge, and practice that we need to make sense of that. So it may not just be life science, it may not be just earth science and space science, but it might be integrated. We might be bringing in some ELA skills and some math skills as well. This slide shows you the NSCAS science assessment system, all the components, beginning in the classroom. So these little dots on the far left, K through 12, you know your teachers are tapping in, giving formative assessments and checks to figure out what do kids know and can do. And so that's repeatedly happening in the classroom. Then that leads into our formative task repository that has been developed by our educators. And this now has, like I said, 5th and 8th grade currently are in there. Tasks are in there we have tasks developed at almost every standard, every indicator level, multiple tasks. We want teachers to go in, to pick those tasks up, use them. It's in a Google class, a Google Doc situation, Google repository. And so we really want teachers to feel comfortable if they want to get in there, pick up that task and use it as it is to find out what their students know and can do in grades 5 and 8, and pretty soon grades 4, 7, and high school science. But we also have design tools in there that they can go back and look at those tools, and I'll speak about those in a minute, and they can develop their own. They can add on to the ones that are there. We really want these to be for the teachers because they know what they're trying to figure out about their students so they can propel them forward in their learning. We are currently collaborating with a couple districts across the state who have been training their teachers in the process of principal assessment design on how to design these tasks. And we are getting some collaboration with them and looking at their tasks as well. And we'll be growing our repository to K through 12. And we're hope that will be done and ready to go. So there'll be tasks for even kindergarten teachers to look at for science by January of 2022. That is really our goal, to have tasks available to teachers across the state, K through 12. Then we have this interim assessment piece, which someone spoke to this earlier. Their district uses Map Growth for Science to tap in to see where their kids are related to science. Some districts are writing their own assessments and tasks. But that's another piece of the science assessment system. And of course, statewide summative assessment at grades 5 and 8 and high school third year cohort is the ACT for science. So just 5th and 8th and high school third year cohort. Okay. So the key thing that I think we talk about, and I know Jeremy alluded to this as well, is that coherence. We really want coherence, not just for science, but in all content areas, between curriculum, instruction, and assessment. Some people hear it as the CIA triangle, but we really want coherence in that system. And so there's a feedback loop, and those are informing each other to give students feedback, to give our teachers feedback. We also therefore need coherence in our assessment system, how the science assessments are developed in that formative repository, as well as statewide summative. Those tasks were all developed using the same approach. So really getting that coherence when they see a task in the repository, the science formative repository, as well as the summative, they won't look that much different. Kids won't be like, oh, these are way different than each other. Will be very similar in the way that those tasks roll out. And I will show you what a model will look like in just a minute. So coherence is key. If you're going to have coherence, you have to have things to make sure you stay coherent. And so we have features in our science assessment system and to maintain consistency. And so as you can see from left to right, we always begin tasks with a problem or a phenomena, and instruction is typically happening in the same way in your classrooms. Kids are being engaged in diverse sense making. We're asking kids to use evidence, like, what's the evidence to support your answer? What evidence did you find to say that? We want kids doing science instead of, to understand it by doing it. And then making sure that we're hitting the grade level targets. So our science standards are written at the grade level, not grade level bands, but there are science standards for every grade level with indicators for each of those standards. So making sure we're hitting those targets. And this slide just shows that we really are moving from, in the assessment development process on the left of this slide, to we're moving toward the things you see on the right in how we're developing in our assessments. The first one is just that coherence. We really don't want assessments written in isolation. We want them coherent, not only in summative, but with our formative repository, seeking that coherence. Really looking at the instructional shifts in instruction, as well as curriculum, so that we have this feedback loop through all three pieces of that system, CIA. We're really starting with developing a task from the construct. And what I mean by that is really talking with teachers who are developing these tasks about what is it you want to know about your students? What's the purpose of the task? How are you going to use the information? Start with that and use design tools to develop an assessment that will measure those pieces and give you evidence of that in a very valid and therefore reliable way. And then always determining what counts as actionable evidence. And teachers making those choices when they design the task, not after the task is done, but as they're designing it in the process. Sometimes this is known as backwards design. So moving from quality standards, which I told you were developed in 2017, up through quality instruction, formative, interim, and summative assessments, and really building from the classroom level out, or up, I guess I should say. And when we build in this direction, it really makes summative at the assessment, at this building, the summative at the service of the instructional shifts. So therefore, we're not hearing real disconnect between students saying, oh, we've never done anything like this before when it comes to state summative, or maybe hear that phrase, we're teaching, we're practicing for the test. We do want kids doing samplers for the test for the state summative, but those would feel very familiar because they've seen tasks in their instruction that are similar and in the formative repository that are very similar that they've worked through together, either individually or even in a group. I talked about this earlier, but principal assessment design is the process, the approach we use to develop statewide summative for science, as well as teachers to use the same approach for the formative classroom tasks. And basically we do this because it really is a way that we will garner reliability, validity of evidence, and therefore provide teachers that what they need to make shifts in instruction, and also provide feedback to students about their learning and to show that progression. So, and when you use principal assessment design, it's design choices, and teachers are making those design choices across our state to get to of what we need to know about students as far as our standards. Well, what does principal assessment design mean? What did the teachers do through this process? Basically, there's a lot of details about this, but I just wanted to show you that basically when we brought the teachers in, they started by unwrapping. They unwrapped the standard at the indicator level that they were going to try to measure or find out more about their students. They unwrapped it. They unwrapped all three dimensions. The DCI is the content. The SEP is the practice that students will use in the task. And the CCC is the lens that students will look through. They unwrapped all that because they themselves had to really have a deep understanding of what is that indicator? What does that mean? Because if I want to create a task, an assessment about that, I have to deeply understand it myself. So teachers began with that. Then they created what's called a task specification tool. And we had templates for all of this for them to complete. And that really talks about those design elements, like what do I exactly want to measure? What knowledge, skills, and abilities do I want to know about my students? How can they show me this? Like what kind of evidence would it be? Are they going to construct a response? Are they going to draw a model? How are they going to provide evidence for me as a teacher to know that? And then how can I change the cognitive complexity of a task from my developing students who are trying to show me what they know and can do about these indicators, and my high ability learners? So a task specifications tool is a menu of all kinds of design choices about the task that the teachers will then pluck certain pieces out and next design the task. I love the task specification tool because it will be in the repository for any teachers across Nebraska to look at the task and say, "Ooh, I like this task, but I want to add a couple more pieces to it." They can go back to the task specifications tool and read through all of those design choices and that menu of options. And they could maybe pick a few more things that they want to add to the current task that's in the rubric to even make it even like longer, more in depth, more challenging. So these are the design steps that the teachers went through. Of course, the last step, they developed those tasks. There are rubrics in there, as well as an exemplar response for every single prompt or question. So those are all available to teachers when they get into the repository. Question is, where is the repository? And so the repository is located on the Nebraska Statewide Assessment homepage, which you see here. Statewide Assessment homepage. And then on the far left, you see NSCAS Science. So you would go to the NSCAS Science page and it would take you here. And then this arrow is pointing where you will find it. It's right in the middle of the page. Currently says Science Classroom Formative Task Repository for grades 5 and 8. That will be changing probably by mid-fall, October, November. It'll say grades 4, 5, 7, 8, and high school physical science. Now, this is under password protection, not because we don't want teachers using it. We absolutely want every science teacher to go there, but we really don't want students to get there. We know how clever they are. And if it's going to be formative, we don't want them getting to the rubrics, seeing all the tasks and the exemplar responses. So we put it behind a password. So please share this password, this repository with all your science teachers in the district. We absolutely want them using it. But that's why we put it behind password protection. What do you find in there in the repository? I said it was a Google folder. So on far left of the slide, you'll just see it's kind of blurry, but that's the organizational structure on the far left of what it would look like when you pop it open. On the far right of this, or on the right side of the slide, it tells you what's in the repository. Again, there are blank templates for all those steps, for the unwrapping, for creating that task specification tool, even for developing the task and the rubric. There are blank ones in there because we do want teachers eventually over time to go in, learn this process, work maybe as PLC teams or individuals to work through this process, develop their own. This is what we really hope and want to continue our professional learning across the state to help teachers to be able to do that. There's a grade 5 folder where all the tasks are for every standard, almost every indicator within the standard. There is a student-facing document. Teachers simply have to download it and then put it in their Google Classroom. They can run it off a copy, piece of paper, give it to students to work in groups or individually. There is a teacher administration guide to tell them how to use the task that has the rubric and the exemplar responses in it, and also to show them what it is aligned to, so they know exactly what this task is measuring. And then we have the same thing for grade 8 in that folder. Now we have a learning module on how to become familiar with this repository. So if your teachers get in the repository, they're like, "Ooh, I'm overwhelmed," they should just go to this quick learning module. It'll just walk them through the repository and familiarize themselves with it. We also have, for number 5, we have modules that can teach the teachers individually how to do this process, or it would be a great thing possibly for a PLC to work through these learning modules to learn, like, how do I unwrap the standards and the indicators? Like, what's that process? And how do I create a task specification tool to get me to a high quality task? So there are individual learning modules in there for every single step of that process. That can be done individually, like I said, or possibly something a science team would want to do in a PLC to grow their capacity as well. And then the last thing is just if teachers are having trouble, like, how do I keep all the formatting in the documents in this repository? Because these are all Word documents that are in the repository. They're not created in Google Drive. So when they open them in Google Drive, it might look like the formatting's a mess, but if they download them, they will keep all of their formatting. So it's just a quick document to explain all that, as we wanted all of these documents to be editable. Okay. That is it for NSCAS Science, other than I forgot we have this last slide. I wanted to show you what a task might look like as far as a map of it. We talked about all tasks, formative and summative, starting with a phenomenon or a problem, that kids are going to have to use some content, that's DCI, to make sense of this. We bundle how they're going to make sense of this phenomenon with their practices, with their lenses, what lenses they're looking through, and then what kind of content are they going to have to use to make sense of it. We bundle all that together, and then teachers start writing a task, which you see on the far right. A scenario is just a way to get them into the task, to bring in the problem or the phenomenon, to familiarize them with it, and get them wondering, I wonder how that happened. And then we start probing the students to provide evidence with prompts or questions. Every question or prompt on this assessment or task is at least 2-dimensional. So you can see this first prompt measures a practice as what, like, it might be modeling. In order to do the modeling, they have to use some content knowledge. So that's the DCI. Might need a few more little scenarios to keep the story going, to help them make sense of that phenomenon. This would be one task on the assessment. In statewide summative, there could be 5 to 8 tasks that kids will be working through. This is what one task, the map of it could look like. Informative assessment, there'll just be in that repository, it would just be one of these, just one task at each indicator. It would be separate, and teachers could pull multiple ones if they wanted to. Okay, moving on quickly. SIPS is the grant that I coordinate. You can see what it stands for there. Very excited about it. It is a science grant, basically funded by U.S. Department of Ed in September of 2020. There's a 3-year timeline for it. So we'll be bringing it to an end here in 2023. I want to show you the partners that are all involved. Here, we are the lead state, as you can see at the top, with 7 other states who are involved in this work. EdCount is our main organizational partner, but you can see many other org partners here that are involved in this grant work that we're doing, including Center of Assessment and so forth. And what we're really working on is this. We are creating 4 instructional units for science that will have embedded tasks, embedded science assessments, as well as end of unit assessments that will show progression of student learning over an entire year for grades 5 and grades 8. We are involving educators across all 8 states to not only develop the instructional units, but to develop the embedded assessments using the principled assessment design approach and the end of unit assessment. So we're growing the capacity of our educators across all 8 states with assessment literacy. We are bringing them in because they are the experts in students and developing these units. We have Jim Pellegrino, who's a guru in science, who's also working right alongside with us as many other leading science experts to design these units. And then we want to make sure we're also providing units that are portable and that can be given not only in the classroom, but possibly in a remote space. So when we say portable units, portable administration of the embedded assessments and end of unit assessments, it's allowing student learning to happen in a variety of environments. So that's what the goals of the project are for 3 years. And I just really quickly popping up the timeline for all 3 years. We're almost through year 1. Of course, that's all the foundational pieces. We do have a website that's up and just getting started. We're just developing all those foundational pieces and getting ready to move into year 2, developing those courses, those units I talked about, those assessments instructionally embedded into those units. And then in year 3, we will move to engaging teachers across all 8 states in pilot of these units with these embedded instruction assessments and end of unit assessments. So that's where we've been and where we're going. It's really, it's work that's bringing together understanding by design and principal assessment design in a way that maybe hasn't been done in the past with 3-dimensional standards. So it's very challenging work, but we're excited about it. And we've got lots of great partners on this project. I just wanted to show you this learning, what we're hopeful with this grant that we will do. So you can see as in this key that student learning in relation to goals and expectations is at the key, right? That's what we're all about, is kids, student learning. You can see on the bottom, the traditional kind of assessment model we've used, where we give, formative assessments, or the light blue dots will give an interim, some more light blue dot informative, and then statewide summative comes at the end. This project is also working on how do we have 4 units. So you can see the 4 dots. Those are our 4 end of unit assessments that will provide information on progressions of learning over all 4 units. So again, statewide assessment at the very end, kind of like NSCAS Growth. isn't something that would need to happen. It would be bringing forth what students already know it can do over time, over the entire year, to look at students' proficiency at the end of a year. So we're trying to do something somewhat similar in the area of science with those 3-dimensional standards. So that is all I have. I don't know if there are questions.
Yeah, so that's a lot of great work happening in science. If anybody has any questions, I know Rhonda and Audrey Webb, our science content person from Teaching and Learning and Assessment, did a big presentation for Administrator Days, and they went in even more in depth on a lot of this information, and really try to support the instruction, curriculum instruction and assessment in the way with these 3-dimensional science standards. But if anybody has any questions, we can take those now. Everybody's looking forward to the break, I think.
Yeah.
Well, if you have anything, you can let Rhonda know, send her an email or anything about any of this great work that's happening across many states and with many partners. It's exciting work that's happening. It should be very beneficial for teachers to get their hands on and to help them improve practice.
Yeah, thank you. And if any of your teachers or science departments are interested in more information and doing some professional learning, please reach out. I would more than willing, and I know Audrey would be too, to work with them. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Absolutely. Okay, so we are going to take a break now. We put 15 minutes in, so we're going to start back at 10 after 11. We're going to start with Iris Owens and ACT coming right up after the break. So stretch your legs, grab something to eat or snack on, come back, and we'll be here in about 14 minutes at 11:10. Thanks.
Can you see that, Jeremy?
Sure can.
Thank you.
Yep, we got a couple minutes to wait still. All right. As promised, Iris with ACT will go over the high-level information for this part of our program. So Iris, take it away. You got about 40 minutes here. So
Okay. I will go quickly then. Hey, good morning, everyone. So glad you could be with us today. Excuse me. Let's see if I can make this work. Say my slide's not moving. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Sorry about that. Hang on a second. As I'm trying to figure out how to get my slides to move here. Okay, great. So here's a lovely picture. I love this fall picture, getting ready for school. Fall is always my favorite time because I knew I'd get to go to school, and I really enjoyed school. This is a picture of the ACT campus in the fall. And what's great about this, picture, it just kind of reminds me what we do and why we do it. And that's for students. So here we go. We are all in this together. ACT is complicated. I don't know if you have any experience with testing with the ACT, whether you've taken it or you've provided the test at your schools or whatever, but it can be complicated and sometimes confusing. So if you have questions, like Jeremy mentioned earlier, please call me or email me, contact me however you want. It's really important for us to have communication and to help you as soon as we possibly can. So adding COVID to the mix has always been very interesting. Last year, we were able to do some makeup tests for juniors who would have taken it, seniors who would have taken it as juniors in the 2020, spring 2020. And we had a really good experience considering everything that we were going through, finding our ways as whether our districts were hybrid and all that good stuff. So kudos to schools who were able to make that happen. Who tests when? It's a really great question. Jeremy mentioned earlier, third year cohort. Usually that's juniors, but not always. So please keep that in mind when you're looking at your lists for the ACT. That's going to come out in January and February. You're going to have the opportunity to validate and make sure that the student list is correct. And also any alternate students who might be on that list, we want to correct that as well. We have lots of great resources. The one that I usually lead people to first is the ACT sponsored Nebraska website, and that has tutorials and trainings and videos and all kinds of resources for you, especially in new DAC, because there is so much information to take in. So I always encourage you to bookmark that page because it's going to have a lot of information that you're going to want. Whether you contact me or not, we're going to probably find that information on that website. You will have a lot of questions, I guarantee it. But so do all of the DACs, whether they're whatever level of experience they have. They've been testing since we started this program back in 2016-17. They still ask questions, and that's great because I would rather you ask and get the right answer than try and muddle through it yourself and be confused and frustrated, and then maybe misadministration to a test or something happens. We just don't want that. So please never feel bad about asking questions. And as always, this great statewide assessment office here at the Nebraska Department of Education is such a great team, and everyone wants to make you successful in assessment. And so we want to support you however we can. Please let us know how we can do that. The test windows, Jeremy kind of went over this a little bit. The first test window, you have one paper date for the first test window, and then you have 6 dates to test online. That happens in each one of the test windows. The first 2 test windows, the paper test dates are could be your initial test date, and then we use the third one for makeup only. So if you, like Jeremy had mentioned before, if you choose the first test window March 22nd, you can use the April 5th or the April 19th to do makeups, or you can use any of those 18 days of online testing. It's a great opportunity. Okay, so some of the emails that you will be receiving may come from statetesting@act.org. They may come from ACT State Accommodations. They might come from me, and of course, they'll come from the Department of Education, or ACT.org sends, pre-ACT will send some, those kind of things. So just be on the lookout for them. Here are the contact information. I have this in here on this slide, but also at the end, the contact information for ACT as well as for myself. This is what the Nebraska website looks like that the ACT sponsors, and this is the homepage. So we'll give you tabs at the top. It's got ACT, the ACT online prep, or pre-ACT, whichever your district chooses. If you click on the ACT tab, it's going to look like this. And it takes you through the steps that you're going to have to take in providing this test administration, providing training for your proctors, all kinds of good information, accommodations, applying for that. Most of the information that you'll need is here. But some of the information will be at NDE's website, and we have the NSCAS ACT website page. It has great information, specifically things, links to what you need, but also the test window information, parental consent form information, all kinds of great stuff. So if you can't find it on the ACT website, it might be on the NDE website. So there you go, I got that link for you. So ACT accommodations, recently there was some changes in the ACT accommodations system. It doesn't really affect how your schools will apply for accommodations, but it does affect how ACT processes this on the backside. And we are hoping that this new process is a streamlining of our of what we've been doing for years. And what it really does is benefits the student. It's going to provide you access to those accommodations sooner and easier. And so there's some information here on how you would go about requesting accommodations. You would need to have an IEP or 504 plan, or if you have EL students, you just have to give us EL supports, how you support them in the school system. And then we ask you to load those up on the test accessibility and accommodation system, what we call TAA. If you do not have access to that and you require that, let me know. I will get that information to you. Normally, special ed department leads have that, or counselors have that. But if you also request to have that, that's fine. We can do that and get you access to that system as well. Please.
Iris,
well, yes.
Sorry, I'm going to jump in here
Yeah,
real
please
quick.
do.
So you see the dates there, and it's super important, despite the changes that we're really excited about. For accommodations, the deadline is January 21st to apply for those accommodations. Do not wait till January 20th or 21st. Don't actually wait till January. Get it done sooner than that. You should know who's going to be tested, your third year cohort students, right? It opens on September 13th. The sooner you get those in, the sooner you get a response, and the sooner you can take care of anything that's, if there's something missing or whatever the case may be. We anticipate this all running much better than it has in the past and being much more friendly. But it's going to be different and new. And so I can't stress enough the responsibility it is for districts to make sure they apply for accommodations for students with IEPs, 504s, English language learners, and get those done. It's your responsibility. It's an important responsibility, and you cannot wait till the last minute because things don't always go as you plan. So get this done before you leave for winter break. That way you don't have to stress about it when you get back. The sooner you do it, the better. I cannot stress this enough. That every year we have a district that does not apply for accommodations for their student. And every year we have a student has to take this test without accommodations that they should have. And that's not okay. And so I can't stress that enough. Make sure you get this done.
If you have questions about the process or what you should apply for, please don't hesitate to ask me that as well. I've worked previously in the accommodations department and have some really great friends who work in that department still, who are more than willing to help us walk through that, those questions and find the answers for your students. I also want you to remind you that you may have a student who is in an external program who possibly has an accommodation. It is also the district's responsibility to apply for those accommodations unless you've made arrangements specifically with that external program. Usually, for the most part, you have access to that IEP that needs to be loaded up, or the 504 plan. So please consider that as well. When ACT looks at the request for accommodations, the analysts are wanting to know what's happening in the classroom. And so this new format is following the IEDA, thank you, process. And so is supporting what you've already established in your IEP and your 504 plans. But we want to make sure it's consistent from what's in the classroom to what they do on the test. You will need to upload an IEP or 504 plan, but I also want to encourage you to do the teacher survey so that they have more information on what the student is doing in the classroom. For EL students, you need a letter with the school letterhead and any supports that you provide, like if they have a specific class that they go to for EL, those kind of things. And their ELPA 21 scores. And you can include additional information that your staff might believe will give them a better picture of what their student needs, what your students' needs are, because you really know what's going on in with those students. So we want to know. Changes in test coordinators for the accommodations, please contact me and I will send you the information on how to update that information or create new accounts for new DACs. Okay, so Pearson Access Next is the main system that we use before testing. So this is where your district will select the test date window that like if you are doing paper pencil, you want to choose the March 22nd test date, then that's where you would access that. It's also where your list of students will be after NDE provides that file to them in January. So in January, February, you're going to be able to look at all the students that you should be testing for the ACT. There's a lot of other things that happen in this system. If you do not have access to that system yet, please let me know and we'll create an account for you and get you set up. And I'd be more than willing to walk people through some of the things that happen in that system. So each district chooses your test date, right? That's going to open in the PA Next system. So Pearson Access Next is a mouthful to say, so I see PA Next most of the time. That window will open November 1st, 2021, but it closes December 3rd. So it's a really short window. So if you've already decided, make note of that when you want to test, or think about that now in the next month or so and write it down somewhere on a Post-it note that you've noted. And then once that opens up, then you can put that in there and be done with it. Just a heads up that that's a really short window. Custom reports from last spring's tests will be available in PA Next August 19th is what I'm told. So you will be able to download those custom reports. There'll be a school and a district report for you to download. We ask you to download it because it does eventually go away. And if you need access to any of that information, please let me know. This is what it looks like to sign in. This is just some screenshots of what that system is like. There's a login and you get a password. And this is what the main page will look like. So we have setup. That's where you're going to look at for your students, lists of your students, all kinds of information. Testing, this will be specifically helpful if you're doing online testing, and then reports, end of year reports that you can access. Parental consent form. Jeremy, are you available to speak on parental consent form?
He stepped away for a bit. So Iris, I will attempt and then you fill in, okay?
Sounds good.
Okay, the parental consent guidance is due to the fact that there are questions that are asked of students that the federal government has decided needs to have a release from the parent to provide, since ACT provides this information to third parties. So the parental consent form you may download and provide to parents to take care of this, mostly with just your initial grouping of paper forms that you have parents sign in the beginning, or you handle that however you wish as a local control issue. But there is also something that is online. So I'm going to have to turn it over now to Iris.
So are you referring to the MyACT
Yes.
access? Yes, thank you. So MyACT will ask students questions about where they go to school, what, how many kids are in their school, what kind of classes they take, that kind of thing. So we still, because students are not, they're still minors, that's why the feds are concerned about that personal information. And so even though the students sign off, you know, terms and conditions and things like that when they access their online account to see their scores, we are still asking for districts to have the parents sign these forms. Granted, it won't save us from every student who might want to go ahead and fill out that information, but at least parents are aware of what students will be accessing when they fill out that information. And I think that's helpful. It also is an opportunity for you to protect yourselves in regards to that information going out. And that includes not just information about scholarships, but also college reports and score reports going out. And that is considered a third party. And so you might want to encourage parents to sign that form so that those college score reports can go out. Okay, we're going to talk about online testing a little bit because it's a great opportunity. So you can use it however you wish. You can use it for all of your students if you so choose. We have several districts that do and have great success with that. You can use it for just makeup tests. You know, students aren't available, they, you know, they had a golf tournament or whatever, right? There's always something going on in the spring. And as much as you try to provide opportunities for them, there's only 3 paper test dates. So the online testing is a great option for makeup. Most students with accommodations can test online. That doesn't need to be approved by the accommodations department. All you have to do is say, we would like the student to test online, and it gets approved. They just need to have that information so they don't send you the paper test. You will want, if you do test online, you will want to read the ACT Test Administration Manual and the technical manual and talk to your tech person, your NTAC, specifically in regards to that. Both of those manuals are available on the ACT website. Proctor caching is something that we don't mandate, but we strongly encourage. It's a process to go through with your computers to make sure that that infrastructure is accessible and will hold the bandwidth for all of those students that are testing. I would also highly encourage a mock administration and require a browser lockdown, because those are essential to the success of any online testing. And then I put the accommodations phone number to request online accommodations if you so choose. Okay, I'm going to move on. This is what the system looks like for online testing. You can also use it for practice tests. So if you look under the sign in bar, there's a test of audio, but there's also practice tests. You don't have to sign in to use those. Anyone can use them, teacher, student. However, there's all 4 of the multiple choice sections, the English, math, reading, and science, and also a writing prompt. So if you do think about testing online, if you've never done it before, I would encourage you to use those practice tests just so the kids can get used to the system and see how it works. Okay. ACT district choice. So we've talked a little bit about there are some options for the district for resources other than the mandated ACT test. The superintendent at your district hopefully received a survey in May, and it gave us some options. Those options changed as the summer went along, and we tried to address that and reach out to superintendents and DACs over the summer to let you know what the changes were. Originally, it was pre-ACT, and then the new test, which was a pre-ACT secure, which is more similar to the ACT itself. That pre-ACT secure is now not going to be available this year. It's probably going to be available in 22, 23, but not this school year. So we are offering the pre-ACT. You can choose that in the fall for juniors, or the fall, in the fall for 3rd year cohort, or the fall for 2nd year cohort. Or you can do the spring test window for the 2nd year cohort, which is usually sophomores. Or you can use the ACT online prep, which has over 8,000 questions, 2 full complete tests, 2 writing prompts that are AI scored so that you can use those for instructional purposes. Once a student logs into ACT online prep, they have 365 days to utilize those resources. So could be very helpful for students who choose to test again. That is available to the 3rd year cohort only. So today is the deadline to let me know what your district would choose. If you have questions about that and you haven't responded to that, or you don't have any information because you're a new DAC and haven't gotten that email information yet, please let me know. I'm going to be available this afternoon. Please give me a call or send me an email if you have questions about what's best for your district and how to make that decision. We would like to know by the end of today, because we had to get files ready so that we can get that information to ACT and get it all set up for you. ACT online prep is going to be opening in mid-October. You will get an email. If that's your district choice, you'll get an email in late September with instructions and login information. Licenses are what we call the accounts for each student. If you need additional ones, sometimes you don't always get enough. You may have an increase in student population from the time that we set it up until October. So if you need additional ones, please contact me. Like I said, once a student logs in, they have 365 days to access that. Talked about this, it says 300 practice questions, but there's way more than that now. The system has an updated course organization, new study schedule, test tips, navigation menu, in-app support, because you can put it on your phone, kids can work on it wherever they are, and at course selection. It's a great tool if you're able to utilize that and get your kids into it. So it's great. Here are the test dates for the pre-ACT. The fall test window, whether you choose the junior, the 3rd year cohort, or the 2nd year cohort, those test dates are October 11th to November 24th. The spring window will be March 14th to April 29th. You will need to order materials for your test window. If you are testing in the fall, you will need to order materials in the fall. If you're testing in the spring, don't order them in the fall. You get to order them in the spring, and you'll get an email from pre-ACT telling you when your ordering window is. So please consider that. So, and also consider that you need to request those materials under the Nebraska state contract, not the standard contract, so that NDE is able to pay for that. If you need assistance, you can call me. I can walk through some of that, but if you have technical issues with ordering or have specific questions about materials, you'll need to call the pre-ACT number here or send them a quick email. This is where the front page to the access of the ordering the pre-ACT looks like. You would go to the materials, order materials on the left side, go to ordering. Important things to remember. Oh, I'm almost done here. How about that? I'm doing good. Prohibitive behaviors and misadministrations with the ACT can be avoided. So make your students aware. These are the things that we see year in year over and over again that students have their tests voided for. And we hate for that to happen. ACT doesn't want that to happen. You don't want that to happen. We certainly don't want that to happen. The two big things that we've seen is working ahead and behind, and cell phones. Those seem to be the big issues. So remind your students to turn off their cell phones if you can, so collect them in the beginning of the test. Just make sure that that's not a problem with during the test proper. Remind them that someone is watching them test. So if they go ahead or behind, that you will have to void the test. And we've had about 45 students who had that happen last year. And their tests were voided. They had no score at all. We know they're anxious about it. We know, and you know, this is important test for them. However, if that happens, that it has to be voided. So just gentle reminders really helps. Proctors will need training and reminders on those processes so that you have good testing experience. And specifically, the one thing that we see with proctors is maybe giving too much time, so they're watching their clocks and they forget to cut them off at that 40 minutes or whatever it is. So just reviewing those processes and going through that training with them is good for everyone. Okay, I want to just remind you, online testing provides 18 test dates compared to the 3 with the paper. Consider it for makeups as an introduction to your schools, to the online testing experience. And, if you have a good experience, possibly you would do that in the future for all your students. Accommodation requests. Jeremy was very specific about that, starting early, even though we're trying to streamline those processes, the sooner you get that information in, the better. And that gives you the opportunity to make sure that those accommodations are approved. If you have students who arrive after the first semester starts that have accommodations and they haven't been applied for by that time, please do that as soon as possible, as soon as you know that they're in. There's some specifics if they arrive after that January 21st deadline that you just want to reach out to me and we'll walk through that together. But if you have any questions, if it's accommodations, if it's test materials, if it's test dates, anything like that about the ACT, please don't hesitate to ask me. I really want to be helpful. The last thing I want to say is, well, probably not the very last thing, but on Monday, October 18th, we're going to have 3 hours to delve into the meat of ACT and all of the processes that you will want to work on and make sure that you're ready for. Please, if you can attend live, that'd be great. If not, make sure that you have an opportunity to watch the recording. It'll be very helpful. I think you'll have less questions in the end. As we go forward, if you have questions, if you have any problems accessing any systems, don't hesitate to ask for a one-on-one with me. I would like, last year we did this, because we were all being virtual for the very first time. DACs, new DACs specifically, would have a half an hour with me, and I would walk them through how to get to access whatever they want in the PA Next system, or we could talk about accommodations, however you want to do that. If you just want to talk about ACT in general, you want to tell me about your dog, that's great. I like that too. So we can get to know each other, and you can feel comfortable and confident in helping your school and your district provide the ACT. So do I have any questions?
Well, let me follow up real quick, Iris. And I can't stress this enough. So no other state has an IRIS. We're a great state in many ways, and we're very lucky to have Iris be our contact for ACT. She knows our programs better than anybody else. She would, if I was in a district, she would be the first person I called with anything ACT related. She's going to have the right answer, or she's going to help you find it. If you have to call somebody else, which happens occasionally, she might direct you that way. But she is the first stop I would go to every time. She does a great job. A couple of the things that you're welcome. A couple of the things that I would mention about the misadministrations and prohibited behaviors, just kind of a follow-up on that. Absolutely, let your students know that the proctors are looking for that. But also the other thing that I would say is it's important to remind all of your proctors and all of your teachers that do this, not only for ACT, but for everything, that it's a professional responsibility, and their job, if they catch a student, is to turn that in, and to not do that would be a violation of their professional practice oath, which is a problem in and of itself. So letting the students, making sure the teachers understand that's really important, but even telling the students that the teachers have to do that explains why they're looking and doing their job. That all of those things matter. And those are deterrents for students that really just want a better score and have a momentary lapse in judgment. And so it keeps them from doing those things. And so letting them know that the proctors are specifically looking for working ahead or behind, and just having your cell phone is enough to get yourself a 0 and void everything you just did. It should be enough for most students to keep them from doing those things, we hope. And so being very transparent in both of those sides, I think, is helpful. I'll fill in one other gap of information here, and then we can take some questions about the parental consent. So basically, when we originally did the parental consent, it's been made very clear to us that districts or actually the school specifically is responsible, because of this is a mandated test, and since the school is the legal authority over the students while they're there, they're the ones that are actually violating privacy laws when they make the students fill this out and don't get parental permission. And so that parental consent is really there to protect schools and principals and anybody else that has to do with the assessment there. Since ACT moved to My ACT online, it becomes much harder to enforce that students are getting parental consent and therefore not signing up for things that their parents don't want them to. That being said, we are working on with lawyers both at the federal, local, and ACT to determine what needs to happen in this space. But we're getting a lot of mixed answers from different sources. And so our best recommendation is to go ahead and continue to get that parental consent for the time being until we get a final answer from the lawyers about what needs to happen in this case. We think that it's possible that we could, and we continue to advocate for a technology answer to this that via ACT, and other states are pressuring on ACT to do this as well. So that may be in the future that can happen. But for the time being, our best advice to you is to go ahead and get that parental consent from your third-year cohort students, so you don't have to worry about it. And that should cover you as long as you're doing your best and you're making an attempt, even if a student puts the wrong thing or decides to defy what their parents wanted, it should protect you at the very least. And so any other questions about ACT for Iris or policy type things for me or anybody else at this point in time?
I just have a quick question.
Sure.
It's my understanding that there's certain roles that you cannot be in the ACT process if you have a child that's that age that's taking the test. So can you clarify for me what roles those are?
Right. So the you can be a DAC or a test proctor. You cannot be a test coordinator if you have a student who's going to take the ACT during the state test.
We're talking about your personal children, right? So
Personal,
Yeah.
any family, actually any family member. So if it's your you know, your husband's second cousin or something like that, or, you know, whatever, your great niece, you know, it really doesn't matter. So the test coordinator position would need to go to someone else, and the access, you can still be the DAC for the ACT. You just cannot touch the test booklets. You can't have any contact with the test booklets before test day. You can be a test proctor if you proctor in a classroom that your family member's not in. So I always suggest, like, if your family member is a standard student, is going to take this test standard, it's a great opportunity for you to proctor in an accommodation room. Is that clear, Jennifer?
Yeah. Just one second.
Okay.
I'm writing it down here.
Good.
So you can be the DAC, you just can't touch the test booklets. You can be a proctor, but just not in the same room. But
Right.
you can't be the test administrator or the test
Right.
coordinator.
No.
Okay.
That test coordinator is the one that takes care of the materials when it comes
Right.
into the school and distributes them and everything. And so that's the role that you can't have as that. So that way you don't come in contact with those books.
So like let's say this year I don't have a third year cohort that's my child, but next year I will. At the beginning of next year or next summer, I can go ahead and change who the test coordinator is.
Switch that over to somebody else for the year. You can still help them with things and do all of that type of stuff, but you can't be the one that has the possession of the booklets and those types of things.
Okay.
And then you can switch it back after that. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
That makes it, I totally, in our smaller schools, that makes it kind of tough sometimes. I totally get that.
Yeah.
And I have been there, and my kids weren't old enough at the time, but it would have impacted me had I still been in the school. So
yeah, it's going to get a little crazy here because I had a third year cohort last year. I have a third year cohort next year. And then in 2 years after that, I have another third year cohort. So I'm just kind of like, I'll have to switch it a few times. I should be pretty proficient in switching that.
Somebody to do it all the time, and that way you don't have to do it anymore.
I know.
Right? I mean, that might just be easier. So there you go.
Thank
If
you.
you need any help with that, just let us know. Iris can help you move in and out of that role as you need to, or anybody else. Other questions? That's a good one.
Thank you.
Thanks for bringing that up. Yep. Okay, we'll keep looking for questions on anything coming into the chat, but it's almost time for Allison. I didn't, here's the one slide I didn't get your name change on here, Allison.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay.
I apologize for that. So Allison's going to be talking about all things ELPA 21, and I'll let you take over, Allison.
Thank you. So let me get my screen share going here. And slideshow. Good morning, everyone. I think we are on time. I rather doubt it's going to take me 25 minutes, but I'll certainly be around for as many questions as we need. Okay, I've got something going on with my screens here. Can you see?
So we're seeing your.
There we go. Now you can see presentation mode, right? Okay, thank you. All right, so we're going to talk about ELPA 21. The acronym stands for the English Language Proficiency Assessment. It is an assessment that measures the English learner's progress in learning the English language. I should also add that in addition to measuring English, ELPA 21 is designed to ensure that students can access rigorous grade level content as well. And that was really the biggest shift from our previous ELP assessment, the ELDA, to the ELPA 21. With ESSA versus No Child Left Behind, we do have to ensure that our English learners are acquiring English as well as accessing grade level content. The ELPA summative is divided into 4 separate subtests, one for each of the 4 language domains, which are listening, reading, writing, and speaking. The window this year, February 7th through March 18th, that is a 6-week window. All K-12 students identified as English learners are required to take the ELPA 21 summative assessment. I did not put in the slides. There are always a few exceptions. There are some reason not tested codes. You might have somebody who needs an emergency medical waiver. Non-public students who maybe come over and receive services for a portion of the time are not required to be tested. And so when I say all K-12 students, it's really the students in our public schools. And if you have any questions, as we get closer to the testing window, I get lots of questions about individual situations. That's what I'm here for. The testing vendor is Cambium Assessment. And so in addition to working with ACT and the alternate NSCAS and NWEA, we have a separate one. And if you're a DAC, you're probably familiar with the fact that you're working in multiple systems. I would point you to the Nebraska ELPA 21 portal, and I have the website there. Every single thing that you will need to administer the ELPA 21 is found at that portal. And it's updated regularly. It's just reopened for this current school year. All the documents are current. So that's a really good one to bookmark. The portal was redesigned last year. It's got a very nice design. We've got a picture of Nebraska's Chimney Rock there. Basically, it's divided by user role. So the first time you access it, go to the upper right corner, sign up for email updates. That way, anytime something changes or there's a new notice, you're going to be notified and you'll have the information you need. Otherwise, and I'm just going to go back really quick. Right here at the top where it says users, when you log in, if you just automatically choose test administrator, it's going to get you to where you need to be. There are announcements on every page. And I'm just going to quickly walk through the different user roles. Students and families, this is a non-secure portion of the portal. They can access practice tests. They can access a tech skills checklist and the parent guide to ELPA 21, which is in English and Spanish. So those are some nice resources for families. Teachers, of course, can access these as well. If you have teachers who want to monitor students' tech skills or administer practice tests, those are available at any time. And we do recommend multiple practice opportunities. Test administrators is divided into 3 sections. The first one is preparing for testing. That's where we'll find the practice test administration. We'll find TIDE, which is the testing engine. I'll get a little bit more into that in a minute. That's where you go to actually administer the tests. The operational test administration is used whether you're administering a screener or a summative. And then after testing, you can access your scores in the reporting section. And with the summative window, if you have to give a paper test, just as you do with the NSCAS alternate, you don't send that paper test in for scoring. You log into the system and you enter the student scores. That's the data entry interface. Technology coordinators have their own section in the ELPA 21 portal. That's where they can get all of the information they need about secure browsers and install them, as well as the technology requirements. Okay, as promised, I'm going to talk a little bit about TIDE. The acronym stands for the Test Information Distribution System. So that's why we just say TIDE. That's a mouthful. When NDE is notified that a district has a new DAC, I go in and I create an account for DACs. And so if you have any English learners, if you have had in the past, you have most likely had an account created for you. I then follow it up with an email of how to access it, how to get into the system, and some resources. If, however, you're a new DAC and you don't have access to it, just reach out to me. My contact information is on the last slide, and I'm happy to help you. This is a great time of year for you as a DAC to go into Tide and review your users. Most of the time, there's some staff changes. You may want to delete some access records. You may want to add some. And the Tide manual will tell you everything you need to know about privileges associated with each role. But if you have any questions, I can help you with that as well. So right now, we're getting ready. A lot of districts are getting ready to screen students. Students do have to be entered into Tide for testing, for screening, because they sort of trickle into the district, or we do it all at the beginning of the year. So those things are done by you at the district level. When we prepare for the summative assessment in early January, and I think it's January 10th this year, I will send out notices and reminders. We will go into NDE's advisor system, goes into your SIS, and we will pull your records, all of the records for students who are identified as English learners. Those will be loaded into Tide in preparation for testing. So that happens, I'd like to say automatically, but I think that would kind of do our tech people a little bit of a disservice because they're doing some work on the back end. There is a little window that may happen between January 10th and the time the test window opens. Any new students who come in that window who are identified as English learners, you will have to manually add. So we try to keep that window as small as possible. Basically give the folks at ELPA enough time to get the records loaded and get everything for tested, but not have it so long that you've got to do a lot of manual additions. Tide is also where you can establish settings and accommodations. If you need to create an appeal, if something goes wrong in administering the test, there's a process to administer appeal that comes to me, and we can work through that. The reporting system is where you will access scores. It opens with a dashboard that allows you to drill down. You can see comparisons from your district to the state, individual schools to one another, drill all the way down to individual students. And this is just an overview of what that dashboard looks like. You can see by looking at this district administered some screeners and some summative. And so each one of these is a live link. I could click on it. It would take me to all of the buildings that had a grade 4 summative, for example. Then it would take me at the building level to all of the students. And there's a picture here that shows performance distribution. This I'm fairly certain, yes, this is our demo district. I'm happy to report that most of the districts in Nebraska do much better than this. We see lots of green and yellow. Our demo district is just red. So just for demonstration purposes. In the reporting system, after the test window closes for the summative, which is usually around the middle of March, those scores will be available the first week in May. It's actually a pretty quick turnaround. It does give us time then to send out letters notifying parents if students have tested proficient and they're ready to be redesignated. Every student receives an individual score report. And on that, there's an overall proficiency determination, which is very important. It will tell whether the student is emerging, progressing, or proficient. The ISR also will show individual domain scores, reading, writing, speaking, and listening, and those range between 1 being low and 5 being high. We arrive at proficiency through any combination of 4s and 5s on the summative. And so that's where that comes from. That's a little bit about the summative. I'm going to stop for just a minute and see if anyone has any questions yet about the summative or about anything I've talked about so far. You can unmute or put anything in the chat. Okay, I'm not hearing anything. I'm going to continue. The ELPA 21 dynamic screener is provided without cost to all Nebraska districts. The NDE contracts with the ELPA 21 organization to provide this for you. It's used for determining eligibility. The ELPA 21 dynamic screener is optional for your use. However, as I've said, it's free. All of the training materials are provided. If your test administrators get used to administering the screener, they're using the exact same platform that they'll use when it comes time to the summative. So there are some advantages for that. It also makes it really easy when kids transfer among and between Nebraska districts. We can transfer those records, and it just makes it really easy on the receiving district. One change that happened within about the last year that I want to mention, it used to be that we had to wait a while to get the results for the screener, and that was a deterrent for some districts. Some districts chose to not use it because they might not have an EL program in every school, and whether or not the student is an English learner might determine placement. That really has been taken care of. The screener is divided into 3 sections. 86% of Nebraska students completed in 2 sections. Those results are available that same day, most of the time immediately, as soon as you're finished. About 14% of our students have higher levels of English, so they take a little bit longer. They go on to the 3rd section. For those students, we have a contract and an agreement with the vendor. At the secondary level, you will get the results no longer than 48 hours. At the elementary level, the agreement says 7 days. I want you to know I've never seen 7 days. The longest I've ever seen is about 3 or 4 days. So there is the possibility that there's a slight delay in waiting for scores, but it's really a small number of districts. And so I would just encourage, if your district has not used the ELPA 21 screener and you'd like to revisit that decision, I'd love to have that conversation with you. This is just a side-by-side comparison. The dynamic screener has, there's practice built right in. The first section is practice. It's one assessment. All 4 domains are integrated within it. It's semi-adaptive with a stopping point. And so there are some decision points that the test administrator makes, and that's all in the training materials. The first speaking question, actually there's 3 of them, are scored right there at the time of testing by the test administrator. And as I said, most scores are available immediately. The ELPA 21 summative, the practice tests are separate. They're completed ahead of time. Those are available at any time. And I really would say, please don't wait until January to start practicing for the ELPA 21 summative. There's no reason to. And it would be just a really good practice for your teachers to get into. If you've got a little sponge time in the classroom, something that you need to fill, they're readily available. Kids can log in, take some practice. They are aligned to reading and writing standards. And so it's just a good thing to do. There are 4 separate domain tests. So as you're planning to administer that assessment, you do need to plan 4 separate sessions. They're not adaptive. They are specific to grade bands, and the scoring is done offsite by the vendor. But as I mentioned, it doesn't take too long. We get those scores in early May. My contact information is here. The Nebraska Help Desk information is here. They have an email, a phone. They actually have a chat system set up. And I also would just draw your attention to our EL program website. We've got a lot of resources on there, so please check that out. Reach out if I can be of any help. This is the time of year where I get a lot of calls and questions, and I'm happy to answer them, like Iris and the rest of the assessment team. We really do try to focus on customer service. So we're here for whatever we can help you with. And I think that's all I had, Jeremy. So I'm going to kick it back to you, and unless anyone has any questions.
Absolutely. We'll pause a moment and let Polly get set up and ready to go, and we can answer questions if anybody has any. Any questions about ELPA 21 or anything else that we've already covered that we can answer for in this time?
You know, I'm going to take that as a sign. I must have been really thorough, and I covered everything they would ever possibly want to know. So yay me.
Yeah.
Agreed. Oh, good job, Allison.
Making sure people know where the resources are. That's
the most important thing.
About, so.
All right. I don't see my screen here. Are you seeing it?
I think we're seeing your screen, your
okay, okay, hold on here.
Not the PowerPoint, yeah.
All right. I'm trying to open here.
You're okay.
There we go. There, how's that?
That looks good.
All right, well, thank you all. I'm going to say good afternoon now since it's a little after 12.
There
Thank
you
you
go.
for those of you hanging in there. I am going to be brief, but I do have some really good information about NAEP, which is the National Assessment of Educational Progress. So here we go. These are the learning objectives. I hope we're going to run through quickly. I just want to briefly tell you what NAEP is, who participates, how schools are selected, what is your responsibility in all of this, and where can you find resources. So really, what is NAEP? You know, here's the very bottom line. It's just an assessment that just provides a common measure of student achievement across the whole country. That really encapsulates the whole what NAEP is. If you want to take just a few seconds to read this, hopefully you're familiar with the nation's report card. I'm going to have you look through that quickly. And you know, the nation's report card is something that the federal government uses, our legislators use, and all of the information from NAEP wraps up into the nation's report card. So it will be coming out after our students take NAEP, but it will be a little while. It doesn't happen automatically like some of the other assessment results that we get. I also want to remind everyone too that Congress mandated NAEP, and it started in 1969. So NAEP has been around for a while. How are scores reported? Well, you won't get school level scores. You won't get individual student scores either, and it's not tied to accountability, but we'll get lots of Nebraska information, lots of subgroups also. And I do want you to know that typically Nebraska does quite well on NAEP. So it's important for our students to participate and so we can share that great information for Nebraska. Is participation required? I know this is a question that some people ask, and the United States Department of Education requires states that receive Title I funding to participate, and that would be 4th and 8th graders every other year. And yes, NDE also says we will participate too, because all districts receive Title I funding. Now, not all schools necessarily receive that funding, but all districts do. So if your district is called up, then I know you'll say yes. Here's some information about NAEP. We typically give NAEP every other year in the odd years. NAEP was supposed to be given this past year, and then because of the pandemic, it was canceled. So now we're moving to even years. So we will be giving NAEP this year in 4th grade and 8th grade. It'll be math and reading, actually math and or reading. So if a student is selected for math, they won't take the reading and vice versa. And then in 8th grade, there'll be a few schools that take US history and civics. And I will let you know if your school will be participating in that piece. The assessment window is January 24th to March 4th. And we will be notifying all schools, hopefully early September. You'll be notified via email if your school is selected. These are just some other assessments that you maybe have or have not heard of. International studies. NAEP is a big umbrella, and these assessments fall under NAEP also. These assessments would be given also sometimes on a yearly basis. Schools may choose to participate or not participate. And I do want you to know that this year, Nebraska is not participating in any of these assessments. But again, maybe you have heard of some of them. I think some people wonder why some schools are chosen more than others. And, you know, it is a random sampling. I do want you to know that, but you know, NAEP is looking for specific subgroups. And so if you have more subgroups in your district, you're probably going to be selected more. So the larger districts, Omaha Public Schools, Millard, Lincoln Public Schools, Grand Island, some of the bigger districts, you're always going to have some schools participating in NAEP. NSCAS, it can't really be compared to NAEP. The descriptors are different, and we really just are not going to compare them, because we've got, of course, the developing and on track and college and career ready on the NSCAS side, and then on the NAEP side, they sound similar, but they really are not similar. So we're not going to take time to compare those when we get that information. All right, how can DACs support NAEP? Here's what you can do. Just be really positive. If you get that email, be positive with your schools and your districts. I know it's one more assessment. I know that as a previous principal, sometimes we thought, oh no, one more, but it really is important information. And it's not a long assessment. Test coordinators come in, they do all the assessment, they bring the tablets. It's going to take some front loading work on the part of the DACs and the test coordinators, but it really truly is manageable. We just want to make sure all the little jobs we ask you to do get taken care of. And if I need to gently nudge a principal or a school testing coordinator, I may ask for your help, and I hope you'll help me with that. And let's see. Here is some information if you want to get on the NDE website. Again, NDE website is incredible. There's so much great information, and NAEP is on there. You can just find just about anything you want regarding NAEP. And also, if you're interested in the nation's report card, there's a link right there, also on the NDE website. So with that, my role is just to be there as a resource to you. Please don't hesitate to call me. I'll probably be calling and reaching out to you too. I want to make this as smooth as possible for everyone. And I know it's going to be a great year. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer any questions you have. And if not, I look forward to getting to know some of you as the year goes on. So I think that's all I have, Jeremy.
Great. That was a great overview, Polly. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
If you have any questions now, we can take some time to answer those questions, or if there's not, obviously we can let you go a little early. And if that's the case, there are a lot of there's a lot of moving parts to all of this, and we know that. And once again, I can't stress enough, don't hesitate to ask questions, provide us feedback. We really do want to improve things and to be responsive to you and make you successful in this role of DAC. It's an important responsibility, but it is a lot of work, and we understand that. Trudy and I have both been DACs in districts. We both understand a lot of the work that happens. And so if we can help at all, always let us know. Are there any questions? If you have questions, please come off mute or go ahead and type those in. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up. All right. I think I've done enough wait time there. If you want to stick around and ask other questions when it's not recorded, you're more than welcome to do that. Thank you very much for your time, and please have a great school year. Thanks for all you do for your students and for your staffs. We appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.